Well, hello, this is LA Little with TA Today, and I want to bring to you an update on many of the themes that we've looked at, talked about now for 6, 8 months. And all of them are kind of coming to a head here. They've gone into sideways ranges for the most part, but we're going to look at each of those and we're going to go through those and we're going to say, okay, what's the deal? Where are they now? What's the trade if there is one? What are those sectors? What are those ETFs? What are those general areas we're going to look at? Well, it's four major areas. To start with, the SOXX, the SMH, the major components in it, where they're at, where they're going. Next up is precious metals and the major components in it, again, where they are, where they're going. After that, we'll shift our attention to crypto markets, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Solano, Cardano. Those are the major ones. That's the ones we'll take a look at, see where they're at, where they're going. And then finally, we'll round it out with my favorite, uranium, the major uranium miners again. Where are they in their cycle? Where are they going? How can we take advantage of them? And finally, we'll wrap it up with the mega cap technology stocks. Typically, they're called the Fab Four, Magnificent Seven, if you want to expand it to all of them. We'll look at those, we'll see where they're at, and we'll see where they're going. Before we get started here, I just want to, make sure that we're on the same page because, the words I say have different meaning to different people. There's plenty of places you can put your money, right, in terms of investing and trading. For me, the key thing is to pick out those areas where the intermediate, the long-term time frames are aligned. And ideally, they're preferably long because the short trade is a hard trade. It's a difficult trade to make. Your timing has to be very good. And so I want to see where a stock, the sector, the general market are in alignment, they're congruent, and they're bullish. And particularly bullish on the weekly and the monthly time frames, which says that we got a long runway, right? So that we can make those trades with the idea that the market's going to bail us out even if our timing's not perfect. So you want high probability trades. That's what I'm trying to do. The other side of it, of course, is reward and risk. You want a high reward, a lower risk. And so that's about timing. That's your entries. If you've watched some of my videos before, you realize, with me saying this, that that's what I'm doing. You want to be able to go after those things that are going to make you money at the time that you're going after them. You don't want to just sit there. And so most of the time, what I'm doing is taking a core position in those areas that ideally are going to give me good profits at that time. And I'm going to add to them and subtract from them, right? Trade around that core position until we get to the point where we can actually, fully invest again and ride it again. Because they're going to go through this ebb and flow process. They all do. Some of them go faster, some of them go slower, but they're all cyclical. They all do the same thing. So with that, let's get started. Let's take a look at all of this. If you like what you see, if you like what I do, hit that like button because the Google algorithms favor that, right? Subscribe to the channel if you want to see anytime I push these videos out. And and lastly, the video is a little bit long, right? Because I'm covering everything in one video. So it's sectioned off. All you got to do is, if you don't want to see all of it, just flip to the section you care about and check it out. Okay, let's get started. Okay, taking a look here at the SOXX. I've got the ETF up with all the various components. Let's look at the SOXX itself. Let's start with the cube so that we can see what the situation is here. When we look at it, what we see is that essentially, we're bearish on this time frame, the short-term time frame, and we've got bullishness elsewhere, right? And that's what you want, right? So bearish here, bullish, turned bullish. It's bullish there, not extended. That's all good. If we go to the, the majors out here, VTI, that's all fine, right? So basically what's happening here and what you're going to see elsewhere is that all of these are going to be bearish on the short-term time frame and they're going to be bullish out here on the longer-term time frames. And what that means is that, if you think about it, is that you've got a momentary weakness taking place on the daily chart, whereas on the weeklies and on the monthlies, these things are as strong as can be. And that's what we were talking about at the beginning here. You want something strong and you want to be able to trade around that position if you have a core position, and you want to use that to your advantage. Now, technically, what do we have? With classical, you can do all sorts of various technical stuff. Neoclassical, very simple. Where's supply and demand? Where is it? What does it tell me? What's the market telling me? Let the market tell me what it's doing. If I look back, this is a test, right? We break down right here. We come back up and we test it. And here we closed over it. Now we did get lower, but we're coming back up. The fact that it closed over it at this price point right there, right? Last week, that says that what was down is most likely, almost certainly, sideways at worst, potentially going back to the upside. So what does that really mean? Well, that means the range is in effect, right? Whether you want to draw it from the top to the bottom, however you want to draw it, I prefer to take the highlighted points. So in my case, I would probably look at this as a range that, until it proves otherwise, is probably from about here down to like right in that area, right? That's the bulk of the trading. You got a little bit outside of it here, a little bit outside there, but almost everything's inside that. To me, that's the range. And if you look at it on the weekly, you can draw the same sort of thing. You got your range. In this particular case, you'd probably take it all and you take that part of it. So what's the key thing on the weekly telling us? Well, the key thing on the weekly is this big bar down. That was the breakdown bar. If you close back over that, folks, you're going back to the highs. You're certainly going to the high of the range. You're potentially going back to the highs. And so this is working its way back up to that level on that time frame. Coming back to that daily, so we've got a bearish retest region that failed. This one failed, and this one failed. That means that you're going to try and go break swing point highs, which are here and here. That's where this thing's going. That's where it wants to go. And so, this whole ideal of a range, that doesn't mean that it has to break out. It just means it's going to go test them. It potentially will, break out of this one, I would think, try to get to that one. But certainly, it looks to me like it's going to get over this one before it's done, get through this supply zone that you see in the red, and try and make it to the next one, which is the very top of the range. And so what do I think in general about the SOXX? Is there a trade? Yeah, I think so. I think there's a trade. I think if you get any weakness back into this area right here, you can buy it. Anything back into there, you can buy it, right? Your stops, highs of the lows, right in there. Where are you trading to? You're trading to this swing point high and potentially that one. That's the idea. If you're wrong in terms of timing, well, market's probably going to bail you out. This high, 221.86, that's the breakdown bar. 221.86 is right in this supply zone that we're looking at. 221.86 right there. So if you get over this, that's going to break that. Again, the range is going to expand back to the top side, and that's what you're shooting for. If you look at it long term, you got a breakout, a little bit of a sideways movement, a lot of volume coming into it as it broke out. This is a nice looking situation. Look at SMH. SMH basically going to show you almost the exact same situation. And then if we go to some of the high flyers inside of it, let's look at TSM. This is one of my faves. This one actually just got a nice bump up on Friday along with the rest of the market, broke over its retest regions. Again, those retest regions are swing point lows that break, right? And you come back to test them. It had already gotten over it here. This is the higher one. It got over it on Friday, and it's going to go after the swing point high. Now this one actually, TSM actually had volume back here, right, and had the big spike on volume and wide price spread. What does that tell you? Well, it tells you that eventually you're going to come back to this price point. And so if you can buy into this area, try to ride it up to there, that's a sweet trade. Let's, we could look at it on the monthly and the weeklies, but again, I think we're going to focus on the dailies today because what we're trying to do is look at ranges in almost everything that we're looking at. Let's go to the big ones. Let's go to NVDA real quick, see what that one looks like. Here's NVIDIA. NVIDIA had a nice spike down on some volume, left volume at the top, but then eclipsed it. It looks like, let's make certain, 97974. Nope, didn't get to it. So you left volume at the top. That's good. That's actually what you want to see. And so you got volume up there, and the bulk of the trades looks to be in this area here. So that's your range. You're right in the middle of that range right now, a little bit to the top side. More than likely, given that this has now closed over the bearish retest region, you're going to try to close over, and you got over that one too, it looks like, or if not, you're right at it. Going to go and try to break that swing point high and go back up and test the top of the range. Usually you're going to get 2 or 3 tests to the downside and then a breakout back to the upside if the trend continuation is there, which more than likely is still the trade, because more than likely the general markets are going to work higher before it's over. AMD is the next big one. Let's take a look at that one. Now this one's a lot weaker. AMD not showing nearly the strength that we're seeing elsewhere. The first thing you want to see it do to tell you that you finally got a bottom is to close over that swing point low. If you do, then you go after this retest regen. But right now on AMD, at least on this time frame on the daily, it's still to the downside. Now if we go over and look at it on the weekly, you can see there's a lot more damage here because that's a swing point low that got broke right there, right? So that's a retest regen on the weekly that has to prove that you're no longer on a downtrend on the weekly. So you got a very different situation. You can see that very quickly if you just look at the cube. You're bearish here, you're sideways there. That was the sideways break, and you're still bullish long term. Matter of fact, if we look at the long term, you're doing a retest regen bullish on the long term time frame, which is right there. So this not nearly as exciting as we see elsewhere, but of course, when buyers start coming back in, they're going to go after those things that look cheap. AVGO is the other big one. Let's take a quick look at that one. AVGO. Okay, so looks pretty good there. Got a range here. Cube shows us we're bullish, sideways extended. And have we broken any retest regens? No, we haven't. The break here would have to go back up to that one. So this one, again, not as strong as the others. Just big range. Big range from here to here, and it's in the bottom half of that range. The midpoint is about right there, and so that's AVGO. So, and the last one I guess would be Intel. If we want to quickly look at it, I know it's much weaker. This one's already broken swing point lows, multiple swing point lows overall. So you got, if you go back and review what I just said, you basically have the top four. Four of the five. If you throw TSM in there, although the weighting's not as heavy on it, there's some others. When you're looking at the SOXX, if you look at the SMH, it's a little bit different. But again, the SOXX to me, it's a trade. Can it break higher again? Yeah, it's possible, but you're going to have to get turns in those weaker stocks like AMD, like Intel. At least, even if they don't go bullish again, at least they got to quit going against you. And so, the SOXX to me, yeah, you can make a trade there. Is it probably what it was earlier? That doesn't look like it yet. It could get there, but it doesn't look like it yet. All right, next let's flip over and take a look at the gold, precious metals. We'll start with gold stocks. So let's get to that one, gold stocks. I usually use the PHYS as the particular ETF that's a decent proxy for the actual physical. Let's start with the cube here. So here we've got bullish still on this time frame, on the daily time frame, and we have bullish across the rest of the time frames, just having turned bullish on this monthly, as you can see over here recently. So again, long runway. This can go a long time, but it's starting to get extended here, and that's reflected in what's happening in the price. Now, this 76.1, that's mean time to failure of the trend. It's cumulative mean time to failure. So when you get up around 70, up to 80, you're starting to get stretched and it's wanting to break a swing point low. Now, if it was going to break a swing point low, at least right now, it would have to break that one. So in other words, it would have to trade all the way back this price point and break below it. That's a long way down still, even though it's already come down a pretty good chunk. As a matter of fact, the way it has come down is probably starting to concern some folks, because you see you've gone 3 steps down now without being able to recover these gap areas that is broken down. And I'm sure people that are in gold are concerned about that. But then you have to realize you just had a major breakout. I mean, this thing went ballistic on the way up, breaking multiple swing points on multiple time frames. And when you do that, which is what happened, right? Multiple swing points, multiple time frames, you don't have to come back immediately, which is typically what happens when you break out, which is why breakouts are not the best trade most of the time. Usually the retest regens are the best trade. And so anyway, getting back to this particular stock or this particular ETF, gold itself, the physical, where is it going to trade to? Is it a buy right here? Well, you don't know that. There's a decent indication that at least next week it's going to try and push back higher because it undercut a higher volume a bar and did a little doji, so it's probably going to try and trade back up. At some point, they're going to take this back up, but when they do, they're going to have an issue right here. Now, the good thing, like we said before, volume at the top. And so eventually it's going to make its way back to the top. So that's a good thing to know. The next thing is it going to be able to get over that when it comes back to it now, right? Because this got tested right in here and it couldn't get back into it. When it comes back up, is it going to die in that same place of high volume, those two bars? Potentially it will. What the market does when it gets there will tell us a lot. But right now it's building out a range. And so if you look at gold itself, you just got something that's building out a range. How deep is it going to go? I could probably argue, at least on PHYS, the Sprott Physical, you could get down to about 1736. 1736 is going to get you back at that swing point low. That is the low. And so, excuse me, it's not the low, it's the next one. It's over 715, but this higher volume bar that's right there and that little green narrow zone that you see, that's where the market, the TA today charts are telling you that's probably where you can expect demand to come in. And so that to me is the scenario with the gold market. So building out a range, you don't really know where the bottom of the range is yet. You just had a huge run. Nothing wrong with it. It's quite normal. This is what it should be doing. Now, if I flip over to the silver market, we'll use the Sprott Physical Silver also. You have the same sort of scenario, right, where you got a big move, gap down, another attempt, gap down, and now you got the little undercut on the volume bar, right? You got the same sort of scenario. This is probably going to try to work back up. The difference here is you've actually broken a swing point low. And so that's a bearish retest region when it comes back up. What you want to see this do is get over it, 928. If it can get and stay over 928, that tells you probably got your range right up in this area. And so that's what you're looking for. Get over, stay over that swing point low. Over here, cube looks about the same. Of course, this is weaker sideways on this chart, trying to break over this swing point high, 899 on a monthly basis. Hasn't been able to do it. Once it does, this thing will turn bullish monthly. Silver, a lot more potential once it gets going. I like the way it's set up. It's just building out a range right now after, again, a nice big run to the top side. To get a flavor for the stocks inside there, we'll just look at the GDX right quick. You can see a clear-cut range that has developed here on the GDX. And so that range on the GDX, roughly from about 32.5 up. If you go over and look at it on this time frame, right, you had a breakout over this swing point high and that swing point high as well. That's where you're building out a range. That all makes a lot of sense because you got this high volume high that is trying to get to and get over. Monthly, still weaker, just like we saw in silver. Look at the cube, it's still bearish, bullish, extended, wants to build out a range, build a base, eventually go higher. GDXJ, which is the junior miners, same sort of scenario. You kind of got a range building out. You just got over, you're building out the range there. You're weaker and you're testing into the highs. It all looks the same. Now, there are some stocks that are much stronger. Like if I look at Harmony, which is the one I've talked about previously in videos, one of the stronger ones that you'd be trying to trade if you're going to trade stocks themselves, you can see it actually broke out bullish on the monthly time frame. Very different picture here. This looks more like what we just saw in the SOXX, where you're bullish, momentary weakness. That's the sort of thing you want to buy. What else is strong? AEM is another one that's pretty good. Here's the build out. You can see how strong the range build out is even on this one. You got your breakout on the swing point high here, and you actually broke out on the monthly. Now, note this one's got a long way to go just to get back to the highs, unlike what we just saw in Harmony. There's a lot up here. But yet, if you look at the cube, you're bullish across all time frames, but every one of them are going to show you the same thing right here. They're either going to already be, turn to sideways, or they're extended on their bullish trends. So that just tells you, in terms of the cyclical nature of this thing, the ebb and flow. You're already at the point where these things want to consolidate more. I wouldn't be looking to be buying and expecting a breakout right away. Just probably not what's going to happen. If you have already established that core position, and I talked about this long ago when it hadn't broken out yet, and said that it was time to be in this, got that big breakout, got that big push, you got a core position. Now you trade around it. How do you trade around it? Well, you sell towards the tops when you get some sort of reversal signal. And I'm going to go back to the physical to show you that, because I think the physical shows it best. I even did a video, I believe, right back here when it did this and said you probably got a top. And you should, if you're going to trade around a core position, you sell some. So as soon as you get that, you try to take the next bar and sell into it if you didn't do it on that bar. And so that's the sort of thing that you have to do. You have to sell into that strength and then assume it's going to do what it should do. If it doesn't and it just keeps going higher, well, once you break out here, you'll probably come back to retest it. So you just buy it again there. So you give up a little bit, but you get your core position totally established again, as long as you understand what you're doing. If you don't understand what you're doing, don't try to trade around a core. Just hold it. You just have to go through the dips up and down, or come over and I'll teach you how to do it. I don't, whatever your thing is. What else is strong? Then, well, there's a number of them. We could look at AGI. I know that one's a strong one. You can see bullish, extended. All the ones that I have starred out here. EGO is another one. El Dorado, again, extended bullish across all time frames. Harmony, where you talked about. GFI, we talked about. KCG is another one. Kingross. This one also. Look at your cube, etc. Now on the silver side, you don't quite have that strength like you have here. Here's PAAS, the Panamax silver. Look at your cube, your sideways, just turned bullish. This has the potential, right? It's setting up, hitting it with volume. Not quite there, but when it takes off, this is going to be a dynamite trade. So this one is one to put on your radar if you're not already looking at it. That's really just about it on silver. PAAS being the primary one. Hecla is pretty good. At least it's getting better, I should say. But PAAS is the only one there that I would probably go individual. Otherwise, I would just go with ETFs. Okay, next we're going to look here at the crypto markets. We're going to start with Bitcoin, Bitcoin being the primary coin within the crypto market. And let's go to the cube first. We got bearish here, bullish, not too extended on the long term, just broke out, but a little bit extended here on the intermediate term. Now, crypto has a tendency to get extended and stay extended, so I wouldn't read too much into that, on a comparative basis. But if we go over and analyze this and ask ourselves, what is it doing? Well, you got a bearish retest regen here. The breakdown was on this bar. And you got another one that's back here. And so you got two price points you got to deal with. One being the top of this one was around 65,481. And then eventually this other one at 68,115. So what you really want to see is you want to see it get over that 65,481 number, close over it, and then that would say it's probably going to go after these swing point highs. Now, there's a decent amount of supply up above. We got this little push going on. I think that there's a good chance this one's going to get wiped out. That bearish retest regen is going to fail, but it could take a while. In other words, this could gyrate a bit, build out, and then go after it. If we go and look at it on the intermediate term time frame, here you're very strong. You do have a swing point low sitting right there. It tested it on less volume, and sprung right back up, right? Little pickaxe type reversal. So that, even though it's extended, that still looks fine. And then over here, you actually got over a swing point high, 2 months removed, and now you're doing a retest regen on that swing point high. Now, this swing point high is pretty narrow, right? And so there is a possibility that it could fail. Ideally, you don't want to see it fail. I mean, that price point is 53,569, and so that's something to keep an eye on. Bitcoin is the strongest of all of them. Let's go look at Ether. Ethereum is the next. And Ethereum tested on the lows. There was two lows down here, two swing point lows. Tested both of them. Less volume on both, right? And got back up on a hammer reversal. So This looks like it's tested and tested well. The issue here is you've got this big bearish retest region. It's going to take a while probably to get over. A lot of supply is more than likely going to be up here. But the odds of getting back up and breaking this swing point high, and this is going to print as a swing point high on Monday after the close. And so I think that you've got two of them there that can, thrust you back up into the supply area. That's the way it looks on the daily. If we look at the weekly, just testing bound on these lows, building out a range, and the monthly not as strong as Bitcoin, hasn't got up to the all-time highs, but it did break a swing point high. Actually broke two of them. You broke here, and then you broke again there. So that means you got bearish retest regions that dip down into here. I doubt those are going to fail. Looking at it over on the cube, you got bullish, bullish, bearish. So this is momentary weakness, not too extended on the weekly time frame. The next up is Solano. Solano, not as strong as, so Bitcoin strongest, then Ethereum, then Solano. If you look at Solano, got a swing point high here and here. You got a retest regen on a bearish that it's doing right now. That is right there. So it's right at the cusp of it, tested into it. I suspect it's going to get over it. That means it's going to go after these two swing point. Well, I take that back. This one's actually already broken that one. So it's really just that one. Should go after that swing point high. Once you get up there, then you got a bearish retest regen up there, which is much higher. Hasn't been tested. Way more than 6 bars. That says that's going to be very hard to get over. Go look at it on a weekly chart. It had hit new highs, pulls back. That pullback, test, test, test. Each time buyers come in, that looks good. If we look at it on the monthly, same sort of scenario here that you saw with Ethereum. It hasn't gotten to the highs yet. So, but pushing with volumes, this is doing fine. And then the last one is Cardano. So if I look at the top 4, these are the top 4. I don't really trade any of the others. These are the ones I focus on. Cardano's the weakest of the 4. Got a swing point high here that it needs to take out. Tested into that swing point low and held. So right now, this is just a range that's taking place down here. If I look at the weekly chart, you can see here this thing pushed up over, right? Came back to test now. Hasn't been able to break it down, so that's a bullish retest regen, trying to regenerate higher. That's good. And if I look at the monthly, you can see how much farther that sold off than the others. Has a bullish retest regen going on the monthly. So in general, all of the coins look okay. Some a little stronger than others. Bitcoin, I think, is the primary one. What you want to see is you want to see Bitcoin lead the others higher. That or Ethereum, one of the two. And I think that eventually that probably is going to be what happens. But until it does, in summary here, for all of these, we basically have ranges in place. Going back to Bitcoin, your range is up here, and so far it's holding. That's not bad. Had a range here, eventually breaks topside, had a range way back here, eventually breaks topside. Just got another range going on, folks. Got to wait for it to build out the range, and they eventually let it go higher. Okay, finally, let's switch over and look at the uranium market. This is my favorite market. This is the one that has provided excellent returns if you're in it. The physical has been where it's at. Here's the physical. Let's go to the cube first. You can see it just turned back to bullish. It had already been sideways. It had turned bearish, then turned back to sideways. I can show you that here. There's the bearish breakdown, one prior to that. Here's your sideways, right? Here was another one. You went sideways there. So, it's jostling around between bearish and sideways, and eventually breaks back over that swing point high, turning it bullish again. So young here, a little extended on this side. That says that, you still kind of need to break a swing point low at some point. Now, it looked like it was going to break one there, just couldn't break it though. They came in, they bought it each time. Like we talked about with Bitcoin, uranium market fairly young in terms of the charts, so this could potentially extend for a while prior to it coming back in. You got the big breakout over here, and that's not extended. So consolidation, consolidation. This is what we talked about in the last video that we talked. We expected consolidation. We expected it in this area here. That's pretty much what has happened. And, typically the way these things work, you get a big run up. Eventually you top out somewhere. You come back down, you settle low, you get a range, you come back up, and then you come back down. Now, you don't have to come down the second time. You could come just partially back down and then break out. And given the news that's coming out at this point, given the supply-demand situation with the physical itself, this may be one of those cases where it goes back up, eats up some of that supply that's right there at the top, dips back down, but starts to scare a few folks out, and then finally takes off. So I don't think I'd be playing if you're doing the core and trading around it. I don't think I'd be playing for the full move back down to here again, especially if it gets all the way to the top. I would think that you come back into the top of this bar, which is where it is right now, and that's probably going to be your buy point if you need to add some more, or if you're wanting to beef up. That's probably where it's at. High is 31.37, and the high here 31.20. So I suspect 31 area is going to be about as good as it gets if this does continue to chug on up here and get up to these highs and then turn back down. Looking at it on the daily, just a breakout, had a range going on at the bottom. It's coming back into this supply area, but I don't see anything here that's going to stop it. This just looks strong anyway you look at it. The U.S. listed issue, or SRUUF, looks exactly the same. Of course, it's the same instrument. If we go over and look at the miners as a whole, you can see the miners. I'm going to focus here on the weekly because you had a bullish retest regen. That's right there. You came back into it. Note this has stayed bullish the whole way, hasn't given it up, and it's bullish again on the daily as well. This looks very strong, looking like it's going to go up and hit those highs, just like we talked about on the physical. And so I wouldn't be surprised to see it come up here, chew away at supply that's going to be right up there, come back down. So you've had one move down, another move up, kind of a down, another move up, right probably towards the top, if not getting over it slightly, and then maybe one more little move back down into that area before it takes off. Getting close. And if we look at some of the individual names in those miners, here's Cameco, and let's look at the cube first. Bullish out here, bearish intermediate term, sideways. And so the bearish intermediate term is when it took the bigger dip back here after earnings the last time around, and actually broke this swing point low. And it's come all the way back up, tested that top, didn't have the volume as it tested it, sold off again on earnings, but was bought. And so this is a very strong looking chart. If I'm looking at individual miners to play, this is not a bad looking place to be doing that. Here's the earnings this past week. You can see how they've sold it off, but then the buyers came right back in because we got that news of the Senate bill banning the import of Russian uranium, enriched uranium, low grade. So these charts are looking strong, folks. Let's go to the next largest one, or another large one. There's URA. You can see this one doing the same sort of thing. Nice range build out. Look at the cube, bullish all the way across. These are all looking fairly strong. We'll look at NEX. Next Gen is there. You can see the strong build out on a daily, on a weekly. Again, these all look really good. And so that makes me think that, either you can play those individuals or you can just come in and buy the URNM and do the same. Strong, still in a range. I expect that range is going to end before much longer, and we're going to get pushed to the top and over it. And finally, let's wrap this thing up with the mega caps. We'll start, and I'm doing just the technology. These are mega caps in general. I'll just pop through each of these. Here's Apple. Apple came out with the earnings, got a nice big pop up. Now, do notice that they sold off on that pop, that typically says that you're gonna probably try to grind back down here and do the retest regen off of these. So that's going to be a buy though when it does it, more than likely. So anyway, I like the way that's set up, especially if it comes back down and lets you in at a lower price point. This is a huge range that had built out. It's about right there is the bulk of it, and you can see now you're basically midway through the range. And so if you can get it back down in this area, that would be a nice trade. You've got a good probability that is not going to trade underneath that, and you're shooting for the top. So Apple as a individual stock in the mega caps looks pretty strong. Amazon, here's Amazon. Amazon probably looking as strong as any of them, going after the highs. Now, Amazon did an interesting thing. You don't see this very much with a mega cap like this. They sold it off hard and they came in and bought it, and it was a gap up from there, and it hasn't looked back since. If you go over and look at the weekly, strong, trying to break out on the monthly basis full, all the way across. Bearish short term, bullish, not extended, not a bad place to play. Let's take the next one. That's a mega cap tech. Google. Google broke out all-time highs over here. You can see it on the monthly. It's not extended there. Monthly, weekly is extended a bit on the daily. So I wouldn't be surprised to see it continue to chop and eventually set a swing point low up higher, somewhere up in this area up here. Maybe this one becomes the swing point low. You come down and do a retest regen. That's the buy on that setup. Now there is the Department of Justice going after them. The decision is going to come out pretty soon. That may be what does it. But again, I think this is a buy when it comes back. If we look at the next mega cap tech stock, here's Meta. Now Meta sold off hard on its earnings, but even though it did, you can see it has grind back up. Now, the fact that it did what it did says that you're going to find supply up here, and it's going to be pretty heavy when it gets there. So this is the sort of chart where you come up, and then you're going to have to work, and then eventually go higher if you're going to. If you look at over here on the weekly, this had a big spike up the last time around on earnings. Now it's coming back down into that. I doubt seriously it's going to get below that. So you can kind of do the math. You know, if eventually you're going to get back to that high, at least anything down in this area is probably a buy. Mega cap technology strong, every one of them so far. Let's keep going. Microsoft now, it's been one of the weaker ones lately. But I think this is just building out. It had great earnings, but couldn't do anything with it. It's just building out a range up here. If you look at the cube on this one, not extended. It is extended. This thing hasn't turned from bullish forever. I mean, it just keeps reaffirming bullish. So at some point, this is going to play out. But right now, it's riding the AI tech wave and continuing to build out a range here. When we talk about ranges, as you saw me talk about on all the others a while ago, you get an extended move. You come down, you go up, you come down, right? That's one test, two tests. Usually the third test is the breakout. So if this is one, this whole group here is two, this would be your third one when it gets here. So it is getting probably towards the end of this consolidation. Eventually, more than likely, should break to the top side. NVIDIA we've already looked at in the SOXX, so I'm not going to go over it again, and I'll do Tesla as the last one. Now, Tesla had been a dog. This has been the worst performing one of the majors, and you can see over here, this is a huge range, multi-years. We're talking about 4-year range taking place. So eventually, if we get the same sort of continuation that you would expect, right, eventually this is going to be a huge move to the upside. But we're not there yet. But what we are starting to see is potential for a real bottom. It's not in the cards yet, but we're seeing it. And the reason I say that is more than likely the bottom is in right here. You had a bearish retest regen that failed. And so anytime you get that, that says that what was down in this case is sideways at worst, right? And potentially eventually going to go the other way. So I think you've probably seen the bottom. And so then that says, where can I buy it if I'm going to try and trade this thing? Now, the nice thing about this is you've got some really big gaps. I mean, nice in the sense that it says it's strong. The difficulty, of course, is that when you get something like that, you've got a lot of risk, because a lot of people say gaps are always filled. Well, that's nonsense. That's not true, especially on the long side. But it does usually find a lot of buyers as you come back into a gap. And so I would think that's still true here. What you're seeing, and this is the clue that you want to look at, retest regen, bullish, right? Is it going to be able to break that down? If it does, the next one's here. That's probably your best buy if you can get it in that area where you see the green. I like Tesla. I've been telling members about it, saying that, I want to get into it. I was talking about it when it was dipping way down here. We got this big spike up. I didn't want to do it yet, because it still hadn't proved. It did prove here. I could have taken the nibble right there, but I didn't. Probably should have. Of course, hindsight's always beautiful. But I think there will still be a chance to get in this. These things, when they correct this far, they take a little while to get going again. So Tesla, one of those that's probably been the weakest, or has been the weakest, but now has put in a bottom. So if you look at the group, right, look at FNG. Let's just throw that in here real quick. The FANG itself, which is the technology stock, FNGS. And throw that in here and pop it up. You can see this thing is hovering near the highs. Nice little range build out, hovering near the highs. If it gets over this price point, 44.08, it's going to take off again. And there's enough strength there, as we just saw, for that to happen. So that's a wrap. That's a lot of material. Glad you stuck around this long. If you did, please, again, hit the like button, subscribe. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.